Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories like these. Now, let's get into today's story video.
My wife cheated on me 4 years ago, and I still don't trust her. 4 years ago, I discovered my wife was pregnant with our first kid. She wasn't as excited as others since she wasn't sure whether she wanted children, but we had been trying for 6 months. 3 weeks later, I discovered she had been unfaithful to me. She insisted it was mine since she hadn't seen the other man since her previous period, but the pregnancy was difficult for our relationship. The disagreements we were experiencing made me concerned about my pregnant child. I was concerned about her because of her incessant weeping. I pushed my mental health to the sidelines. To be honest, I believe I suffered from PTSD. I was also concerned about what would happen if he wasn't mine. I now admire this lady. I've been doing it since high school. We began dating when she was 15 and I was 17 years old. We'd been married for 7 years at this point, and we were both in our late 20s. I would go to any length for her. I would still do so. We were on vacation at the location she had specified. While weeping, she told me how worried she was about the pregnancy, and we chatted for a long time. It never occurred to me that anything else was going on. Due to the intermittent internet, she placed her Facebook Messenger on my phone at some point during the trip. I don't use Facebook and have never used it. When we returned from our trip, I began to get Facebook pop-ups. I had no idea what they were, so I read them. It was a man from her workplace saying he missed her, talking nasty, wanting to get together that night, and so on. She declined him. She snipped it. She had no idea I was watching the whole time. I was at work, my heart crushed, trying to seem as if nothing was wrong with my coworkers. When she arrived home, I challenged her about it. She denied it for a split second till she realized I knew. She said he was the only one. I'm still not sure whether that's accurate. I simply don't believe anything she stated at the time. I informed her that if I found out she was lying, I would fire her, despite the fact that she was carrying my child. She said that they had only met once. I yelled. She repeated herself 3 times. I'm still not sure whether I believe it. She said that she hadn't seen him in around 3 months. That is something I believe in. As I have said, I love this lady. I never went anywhere. We had many emotional chats and many evenings. I endured the worst chest pains of my life, and as I already said, I believe I still have PTSD. To this day, every time I hear that nasty Facebook Messenger alert, even on a stranger's phone, I become anxious. She vowed never to do it again. I informed her that if she ever lied to me or cheated on me again, I'd leave with no questions asked. To be honest, and I'm not trying to shield her, I believe she was on the edge of committing herself. She has been depressed for almost 12 years. She was in a bad mood. I was aware, but lacked the courage to intervene to help her out of her depression. I'm still upset about it. I believe she wanted to see whether she could connect with someone before doing the act. In fact, I discovered a notebook she kept at the time in which she said that she wasn't even attracted to her own spouse. In a sense, she is numb from her despair and doesn't feel anything. I've never challenged her about the suicide issue, but I have confronted her about the attraction issue, and I've subsequently scheduled appointments for her to receive therapy. Our life was perfect. Not nearly as often as I would have wanted. I assumed it was because of her melancholy. Maybe I wasn't doing enough to assist her and make her feel better. She still does not initiate, which I hoped would change. I've mentioned that previously. Also, if I bring up the affair, she deflects and becomes agitated. She did this largely from the beginning, but I would force her to speak. We've also never told anybody. That is something I believe should be changed at times. Except that I told her closest buddy at the time. I was at a loss as to what to do. Unfortunately, they don't see each other very often. Who is he? He was a pay grade above her. I collaborated with her. She is still employed there. That irritates me. He took a step back. His wife is unaware. I told him I'd leave it up to him, but that if he didn't tell her, it would gnaw at him every time he looked at his wife and kid. To be honest, if I wanted to, I could ruin his life. I fantasize about it, but I would never do it. Unless I discovered anything was still going on, which it isn't. I am a decent dude. I strive to be the greatest guy I can be, and I believe it shows. But, to be honest, I fantasize about his dying young and in misery, and I daydream about visiting his tomb and on it. This is the first time, 4 years later, that I've really acknowledged any of this. I apologize for the length of this. However, I'm attempting to make full use of the subforum. I also don't want to hear about her being a nasty person. I still have a lot of feelings for her. She wasn't a nasty person, she was simply in a foul mood. We now have 2 children. They're very cute. My family means everything to me. I simply wanted to share this since I've never told anybody about it and thought it could help me heal some of the trust problems and animosity that I still have after 4 years. I'm sure there's a lot more I should say, but I don't want to start sobbing when I'm sitting here by myself. Laughter, to be honest, I don't think about it much anymore. In the beginning, I used to think about it every 5 minutes. Then once an hour. Then every day after that, maybe once a month now, if that. I simply thought it could be useful. Based on the early reactions, it may not. I have no desire to abandon her. She means a lot to me. Overall, I'm quite pleased. I just feel like she's left a mark on our relationship. We have a good life with our 2 children. We're both doing well at our work. We've definitely developed as a result of this. Edit, I spelled in instead of on in the headline since that's what I do. I'm not sure how to repair it. Sorry. Edit 2, added the final paragraph for clarity. Thank you very much. Always show compassion to one another. Story 2. Wife, 26, cheated on me, male/27, but forgave her. How do I cope with scenario playing in my mind? Here we go. My wife cheated on me. It was a scandal. Despite the fact that Reddit often preaches lawyer up, erase from Facebook, and hit the gym, I opted to forgive her. There was a Reddit thread about how someone worked things out and has been happily married for 37 years, which gave me hope. We were really open and chatted a lot. The other isn't in the image because she was wondering, I was her first and only, whether it would feel the same, not because she wanted to leave me, or didn't find me beautiful anymore, or because she didn't love me anymore. In fact, the instant she realized she was going to lose me, we rent a home and have no children, she broke down. She knew it was bad, but she managed to push that sensation aside, and it all came back to haunt her after the encounter. I was willing, not desiring since I adore her, to end the marriage in a clean and loving manner, but she refused. I believe it is genuine because she is financially self-sufficient, so there would be no material losses on either side, and she would have a place to reside, so I believe it is genuine. She was stunned, and I'd only seen this once in those 9 years. We prepared a list of things we wanted to modify, and it worked fairly well. We spend more time together, and she is pleased that I have forgiven her, despite the fact that we don't have any ties like a home or children, and accepted everything to maintain the marriage. When we're in bed, we talk frankly and freely about whatever is on our minds. We essentially investigated why she was vulnerable to the guy's advances and how we might reverse this. It's really open, and I appreciate how, despite this, we communicate more, talk openly and clearly, do more things together, and hold each other's hands. To be honest, this may have been something we overlooked before the incident, and it could have been the cause of it. That is not to argue that the situation was made any better as a result, but it did give insight into how the groundwork for this tragedy was laid. We're in marital counseling, but I don't want to bring up this exact and subsequent topic right away. Because we were open, and I discovered stuff, I now know how and when she cheated. I'm beyond the fact that she had in the sense of intercourse. I was active before our relationship, so I'm not suddenly tainted. Of course, I'm wounded, and I didn't like the facts one bit, but that's not the most important aspect for me. She claimed to practice safe condoms, but when I questioned whether she performed everything with a condom, she responded no. She was eager to tell me everything, but I realized that doing so would just fuel my hatred rather than be productive, and you know the routine. So far, I'd learned plenty by doing my own research, and I thought that if she said yes, I wouldn't have to know any scenes. But in this situation, I needed to know what step to take. She gave him and he came into her mouth, without swallowing, then on her, without a condom. She is a medical student in her last year who was unaware of the danger. She was taken aback by how great the danger was. She had no idea she was putting me in danger. She was terrified of losing me and was shivering uncontrollably when I informed her about hair splits, and so on. I saw in her eyes a moment of abrupt realization, and she burst into tears. My mind keeps repeating the fact that he came into her mouth. For me, and intercourse were safe and sort of mechanical, but this touched closer to home than I expected. Is it strange to assume that this section is more intimate? She quickly arranged for testing since she was outraged at herself for not knowing it wasn't safe and for exposing me as well. When I'm alone, though, I keep repeating that scenario. The other came in with a little in her mouth and the rest on her. Reddit, I know this isn't a productive way of thinking, though it is, I suppose, natural, and I know it will just lead to bitterness in a downward cycle. I'm ready to go on. I don't have those thoughts while I'm around her. She is aware of my thoughts, and she is aware of how much they bother me. Similarly, she is at a loss for what to do since she can't go back in time. We had for the first time after the incident, and it was unexpectedly nice and emotional. We have a lot of, 2 to 3 times a day. She told me it was much better than before, that she could sense how much emotion goes into it all, and that she realized how fortunate she was that I would give her another chance, no pun intended. Other men would have dumped their so immediately afterwards, and she knows it took every ounce of self-control I had not to do the same. I am certain that if we overcome this, we will be a lot stronger. So, how can I break free from this cycle? Should I just let her BJ out of it? Or do you want to avoid it for a while? Anyone who has gone through the same thing, how did you deal with knowing what acts occurred?